Count Stefan von Tassi, the board game ghoul, and in honor of the arrival of autumn and the lengthening of the nights, I thought it appropriate to introduce you to the game Horrified. Horrified is a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players. It is brought to us by the publishing house Ravensberger and the design team at Prospero Hall, and of course, Universal Studios and their classic movie monsters. In the game, players work together to save villagers from horrible monsters that are ravaging through the town. They must also defeat each individual monster. The game has several classic movie monster villains to face, and each one works differently. The beginning game is to be played against the creature from the Black Lagoon and my favorite, Dracula. In order to win against Dracula, the team must first destroy his 4 coffins, which are scattered around the board, and then meet up with him face to face and defeat him in combat. In order to defeat the creature from the Black Lagoon, the team must perform research and travel their boat along the river until they find the creature's lair. And then, once the creature's lair has been found, they must confront him face to face and defeat him in combat. Other monsters have different ways to defeat them. Frankenstein's monster and his bride must be taught how to be human. In order to defeat the Invisible Man, you have to find evidence that you can use to prove to the police that he exists. To defeat the Wolfman, you must develop a cure for lycanthropy, and so on. Because I'll be playing the solo game, we're going to advance the terror track already to 3. The villagers are ill at ease when there is but one lone hero trying to save them. Should the terror track reach 7, well then, you have failed, and the monsters have won. In order to set up the game, place the board at the center of the table, pick your 2 monsters. You can play with more if you want a more challenging game. Follow the individual setups for each of the monsters that you choose to use. As well, you're going to place 12 randomly drawn items from the item bag on the corresponding spaces on the board. Each player will randomly be issued their character, which gives them a starting space, and each player begins the game with 1 perk card, randomly drawn. The terror track will be set to either 0 for a 2 to 5 player game or 3 for a 1 player game. Shuffle the deck of perk cards, the deck of monster cards, make sure that the villagers are nearby, and you will need the combat dice as well. Now that things are set up, we are ready to begin. Every player turn is broken down into 2 halves. There is the hero phase, followed by the monster phase. During the hero phase, the player will perform as many of their actions as they wish, and they may also use their special action. Using a special action uses up one of your regular action allotments. Things that you can do on your turn are move to an adjacent space. If you do so and you're on the same space as a villager, that villager will follow you if you wanted to. You may guide a villager to or from a space that is adjacent to your current location. You may pick up any or all of the items on your current location. You may share items between heroes that are on your same space. This won't be happening in the solo game, of course. You may advance a task required to defeat a monster. This will require the use of 1 or more items. The color of the items will depend on which monster you are trying to defeat and which task you are attempting to do. If you are on the same space as a monster, you may use the defeat action to use up the required items in order to defeat that monster. And lastly, there is, of course, your special action, which is shown on your character card. In addition to the number of actions that you are allowed to take based on your character, you may also spend as many perk cards as you wish on your turn. Once your turn is complete, you will then move on to The monster phase. At the start of the monster phase, you will draw a card from the top of the monster deck. At the top of this card will be a number. That number is how many items you will draw from the bag and place around the board. Each item has its location printed right on it. Then there will be an event. It might be a neutral event, or it might be an event for a specific monster. If it is an event for a monster that you are not playing with, ignore it. It does not happen. If, however, it is a monster that you are playing against, well then, you must do what it says. After the event, if any is resolved, we then move on to monster movement and striking. Each card will have one or more pictures at the bottom indicating which monster or monsters will move and attack. In addition, there will be an arrow with a number, that is how many spaces it will move, and then there is a die and a number, and that is how many dice it will roll in combat should it land on the same space as a hero. If you suffer a hit, you must lose an item. If you do not have an item to lose, you have been defeated. If you're defeated, well, you wake up at the hospital at the start of your next turn, and the terror track advances one space. The fire symbol is meant to tell us that whichever monster has the frenzy token will act. In this case, Dracula acts, that's the symbol for Dracula, and then Dracula would act again because he has the frenzy symbol. Each time he acts, he will move 2 spaces towards the closest hero, and then if on a space with a villager or hero, he will attack. Once the monster phase is done, we move on to the next player. Villagers are brought into play by the events on neutral monster cards. This one, for example, tells us to bring in Lucy and place her in the theater. You will see on Lucy's character stand that it tells her she wants to get to the mansion. That is where she feels safe. If you can deliver a villager to the space on the board where it feels safe, then you are rewarded with a perk card.
And that has been my tutorial for Horrified from Ravensberger Games. Stay tuned next time for the playthrough.